So, hey guys, this is Samantha. She's a wellness program manager, and she's interacted with hundreds of clients across basically different geographies, different workplace settings, and as we'll find out, different age gaps as well, which is relevant for today's video. So, Samantha, nice to have you.
Thank you.
So today's topic is basically what Gen Z expects from workplace well-being. So let me just get straight into it. So, Samantha, what's the most absurd thing you've seen a company do and call it well-being support for younger employees or Gen Z employees?
Yeah, great question. I've heard of companies that have rolled out free meditation apps. The same week they have announced like major layoffs in the company. And the thing is that nobody really said, out loud, but everyone knew, what it looked like. You can't hand someone, breathing exercises the week you take away their job and security and call it well-being. I've also seen the version, where companies offer a wellness stipend, but in the fine print, it excludes therapy, which is kind of, the whole point of the wellness stipend. If your well-being, can't benefit and can't touch the things that people actually need, it's not a benefit. It's just, a marketing line.
Mhm.
So that's really something I've seen.
Right, right. I can see it. I can see how that comes across as a bit tone deaf, announcing a
Yeah.
kind yeah, it's really weird if you're gonna do it, at least kind of get the timing right. So, building upon this, so do you think that Gen Z's well-being expectation from the workforce is actually different, or is it just the same complaint of HR, like about who's ever the youngest in the room? So, do you think that's a thing?
Yeah, it's actually different. What I've seen in real conversations, not surveys, is that mental health coverage has actually moved from, nice to have question, asked after an offer to like a deal breaker question, before someone even signs. So I've heard of candidates, flat out asking, what's a company's, EIP utilization look like before they even consider the role. So that's, very common among like Gen Z now. Whereas
Mhm.
older generations kind of were taught to kind of keep that question until, year two, or maybe, at the very last minute of, the last interview. Gen Z asks it, first interview. So that's not entitlement. That's just a generation that has watched their parents, burn out and decided, let's not repeat this. Let me enter, a place, a workspace where I know that the benefits will actually help me. And I want to be able to utilize them and that they're good benefits, right?
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good point because, yeah, I've seen it as well that mental health is like a thing that's kind of being brought up increasingly, not only by Gen Z, but also like, some slightly older millennials and stuff. So it's basically like kind of like the main thing right now that people kind of expect from their workplace. And so
Hmm.
if you compare what companies say publicly about supporting Gen Z's mental health versus what they actually kind of do when you approach them to take, like, say, a mental health day off or something. So, what do you think? Do you think that gap exists, and how big is that gap if it does exist?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So honestly, this one is really, matters the most here because the policy on paper is never where the gap shows up. It shows up in those small moments after someone takes a day. I've heard of managers sending, a just checking in, hope you're feeling better, Teams or Slack message to someone on like a mental health day, which sounds really nice, but it can also mean, I noticed and I'm kind of watching, right?
Mhm.
So no one writes that down anywhere, but it's exactly what tells an employee whether the policy is real or just a page on the career site. So the real, tells is what happens at, the review time. Does anyone ever say, you've been out a lot without connecting the dots to why? So that's the gap. It never really, is in the handbook. It's never really, it can be on like the tone on the Slack message. It's
Mhm.
hard when you send those like just checking in messages. It can mean like, I'm watching you, but it can also mean, I hope you are feeling better actually. So it's hard.
Right, right, right. I can see how that can kind of like come across as, both ways,
Mhm.
but generally the employee would kind of take it in the other way that, oh, why is my manager kind of checking
What?
in on me or what?
Yes,
Right, right, right.
absolutely.
Right. So let's take stuff to the flip side, basically. So can you walk me through a real example where a well-being initiative measurably changed something like, say, increased retention, increased output, or kind of saved a person from like quitting the company, and versus one that kind of generated just good PR and kind of changed nothing?
Yeah. So I've heard one of each. So on the impact side, I've heard of a company that has restructured how their managers were trained to talk about workload before someone, burned out, instead of just offering a meditation app after the fact. And their voluntary, really turned over, reported, dropped noticeably within 2 quarters. So that's not a framework. That's a person who was ready to leave and didn't, and they just threw out maybe a meditation app and didn't really, say much. On the other hand, I've also heard of a company that has ran a wellness week with a step challenge and a smoothie bar and maybe brought in some massage therapists. I know that's very common. Got, a great internal newsletter photo out of it. Um, and their engagement numbers really didn't, move. So they're showing all this great stuff. They're showing that they're bringing in all these amazing people. And the numbers are not really, showing much engagement. So the difference is always the same. One touches how work actually gets assigned and managed, and the other touches how work actually gets photographed. So
Right.
that kind of on that, PR side. So the company can say, we're doing all this great stuff, but, behind closed doors, they're actually, no one's really engaging in all of this great stuff.
Mm-hmm. I see the stark kind of difference in both of them. One's kind of like for the actual benefit and one's just for the PR. So yeah,
Hmm.
that makes full sense. So to kind of wrap it up, so if you would kind of take whatever we've discussed, right, the mental health, the kind of the actual understanding of the workload, all of that stuff, and if we were to kind of rebuild the corporate well-being playbook just for Gen Z, what's the first thing that you would kind of throw out, and what would you kind of replace it with, and basically just the entire thing, what are you kind of gonna do with it?
Yeah, the first thing I might throw out is maybe anonymous surveys. It's hard, not a lot of people trust it. They might see, oh, is this truly anonymous, and kind of reflect back to themselves, like, although this might be anonymous, my, HR team can track this back to me, right? So, and, even when they're filling it out, they might not be filling it out truly, honestly. So nothing visibly changed afterwards. So it trains people to stop, that bothering. So same goes for, the EIP hotline model. Most of them see, single digit utilization because no one wants to cold call a stranger about their mental health. What I would
Mhm.
replace it, both with is something closer to real time, low friction feedback built into the tools that people already use. So paired with, maybe actual manager training, because the manager relationship is probably the single biggest driver of whether someone feels supported or not, right? You can also have the best benefit package in the industry. And if someone's, direct manager makes them feel guilty for using it, none of it matters. So fixing
Mhm.
the management layer first and then building back the benefits around it, not really the other way around.
Right. Yeah. I think that would be a great model for specifically for the Gen Z workforce. Keeping all of whatever we've discussed. Yeah. So I think that is basically what I had to kind of ask about whatever Gen Z expects from workplace well-being. So yeah, Samantha, thanks for your insights and your time. That was really great. So yeah,
Thank you. Have a good day.
you too.
Bye.